Hello and welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the podcast show where I interview the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate and motivate others to make the world a better place. Today, I am joined by the phenomenal Gavin Lewis, Managing Director at BlackRock. Gavin leads BlackRock's institutional local government pension scheme segment across private markets, liquid alternatives, ESG, custom, active, and passive investment strategies. He's had a vast array of financial services and asset management experience working for the likes of Vanguard, UBS, Russell Investments, and Fund Building Limited, prior to graduating at Queen Mary University in London. Gavin is also co-founder of the Diversity Project, which was responsible for launching the #IAM campaign across social media. The campaign asks Black people and allies to answer the question, what are you? We can see in the recent press that BlackRock is an inclusive employer and has revealed plans to advance racial equity and inclusion, including a commitment to increase the number of Black employees along with Black senior leaders by 30% over the next 4 years. Gavin has been at the forefront. Welcome to the show, Gavin.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining me today. And it's brilliant to finally get you on a podcast because I know I've been mithering you now for many, many months. I wonder whether for those of our listeners who perhaps don't know you as well as I personally do, whether you might be able to share a little bit about your personal story and also how you came to be where you are today at the forefront of not only everything around diversity and inclusion and Black Lives Matter, but also where you are in your career, because you've had an epic last decade, if you don't mind me saying so.
Thank you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. And just one bit of admin, I co-founded Talk About Black rather than the Diversity Project. I wouldn't want to take anything away from the wonderful people that actually co-founded the Diversity Project, because it certainly wasn't me. But look, I mean, my own story, I guess it's quite interesting actually, because when I first started talking about the subject of racial diversity in the, I guess, finance industry, but also asset management industry, I couldn't point to many other people like me. Certainly no one above me, and I think that's still the case. Certainly no one next to me, and fewer people behind me. It does feel though that over the last maybe 3 years there has been a greater influx of Black professionals into the industry, which I think is a sign of progression. But I also have to realise that when it comes to my own experience, my own background, it's still a rarity, particularly at senior level. So that I grew up in Tottenham, in a single parent family on a council estate. I mean, Tottenham now, quite interestingly, like many inner city areas, has become gentrified. So I think the area is changing. I would say that gentrification, I don't think has been to the benefit of the locals and the minority groups that live there. So I have some views about gentrification. It has some benefits, but also has some downsides. But when I was growing up in Tottenham, it was certainly, it definitely wasn't gentrified, and it was a long way away from being gentrified. So, and again, a disclaimer here, this doesn't mean that everyone that grew up in Tottenham had the experience that I did. I know some people that have had wonderful lives that still live there. This is purely my experience. And again, I'm not speaking for every Black person in the UK either. But certainly my experience was difficult because I had to contend with being in a lot of fights. Sometimes those fights involved weapons and knives, which I was threatened with or had fights with. I guess I never really fitted in. I mean, I wasn't, certainly as a young Black boy, I didn't have a father or a role model, which I probably suffered for it, but I was also very tall, so I stood out. I wasn't really good at fighting. I had glasses, which made me a bit of a target and a bit of a victim. So I had a fairly tough time growing up in Tottenham. As a result, my mum, who I owe a hell of a lot to, sent me out of the borough to a school in Enfield because she thought that I would stand a better chance. And I did. But I guess what she didn't realise is that the school in Enfield was a stronghold for the local National Front gang. And National Front, for those that don't know, was a precursor to the British National Party, which is a racist group. And we ended up in this strange situation where I'd be travelling from Tottenham on the back of the bus with a few other people, trying not to get robbed, and then having a moment of peace, and then ended up in Enfield trying not to get beaten up by the National Front. So I'm not saying that my childhood was characterised by that completely, but honestly, when I look back, those were the experiences that really come to mind. In a strange way, however, it prepared me. It prepared me for a lot. It prepared me to, I guess, be a bit. I guess I was a bit of a misfit, but I took comfort in being uncomfortable. I just got used to it, and it basically meant that I set my own path and had my own ideas about what I wanted to achieve. Because I didn't really fit in, it was very easy for me then to say, well, actually, you know what, I am different. I know I accept it, and I'll do something different. So that was, maybe I wasn't party to the same peer pressure that everybody else was. I was academic. That, again, certainly where I grew up, in the environment I grew up, was seen as a weakness. There was this very, young black boy, there was this very alpha male culture that everyone had to subscribe to. I got away with it because I was good at sport. So even though I was geeky, I hid behind being good at basketball and football and athletics. So it kind of let me off the hook a little bit. So again, as well as being good at sport, I was strong academically. So I simply got a sense of satisfaction from working hard and getting a result. It was very, very simple. I think a lot of that comes from my mother, who I saw put herself through university whilst raising 2 kids and get a nursing degree. And, I don't know how she did it, but she did. So that's set an example to me. So I think these incidents made me really focus on my education, first in GCSEs, then my A-levels, and I got good grades. And it basically meant that I had options. And that optionality is something that I exercised. I exercised the option to go to university and try to make something of myself. Happy to tell you all about my university experience and how I got into the industry. But I guess that's quite a lot, so I'll pause and let you interject.
Mm-hmm. Firstly, thank you so much for sharing, Gavin. I know that we've had the opportunity to talk about some of your background before, but it still absolutely blows me away, because I think it is that real lived experience and the resilience that you have had to make sure you have, and making sure that you're still on the front foot given everything else going on within the surroundings. It's it's a phenomenal story, but I know that it has not been easy. And I think the more that individuals can hear from people like yourself, whether it be that they are Black and they have similar experiences themselves, or whether it be that they're looking for a guiding light and someone who has battled through inadversities of whether it be single parent family, whether it be that they haven't been necessarily given the best start in life. Clearly it is possible still, with a lot of hard work and ambition and determination, clearly, to get where you are within a large, globally recognized organization.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've become and I realised I'm a role model. Honestly, I guess I wouldn't say I was a reluctant role model, but I do, I spend a lot of time and exert a lot of energy trying to change the fortunes for other people, but also myself, because I think I said that my experiences prepared me. I think there's, if you're entering the industry now, there probably is a greater degree of comfort. I'm not saying, so if you're Black and you're into the industry, I think there's a greater degree of comfort. By no means is it easy, but hopefully it's easier, because firstly, all the stuff that we've been doing through Talk About Black, the I Am campaign, these things we hope have at least prepared the industry to accept, diverse candidates, if that's a term that you want to use. But also, I mean, I think unfortunately for me, there hasn't been anyone doing the same for me, not in terms of what I really needed. So, but I've always been the first, so it's become okay, and as I said, I didn't for a long time, and I don't, do I now? I'm not sure, but certainly when I entered the industry, did I fit into it? No, because there weren't any Black people. Certainly there weren't any Black people in distribution roles. So I would go to conferences and be the only Black person in a room full of thousands of people, and get mistaken for obviously the help or someone serving drinks or et cetera, et cetera. but I didn't let it deter me, not because I have this inner steel, but because I got used to being the kind of the odd one out. So, and then when you overlay that with yes, some resilience, that helps. What I'm trying to do now is ensure that it's easier for people who are entering the industry now that are coming up behind, if that's the right term to use. But I'm also trying to, I don't know if people realize, but I'm also trying to make life easier for myself, because, you know, I speak to young people and they face a lot of challenges in the workplace, and then they will look at someone who's senior and think, oh, you've made it. But they don't know that, well, so, you know, I still face the same challenges. And maybe if I talk about it and I'm vocal about it and I'm active about it, I can change, you know, my own experience as well as theirs.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I couldn't have said it more articulately myself. And I think it absolutely does make a difference, because I know way before, you know, the recent events of George Floyd and closer to home, you've been writing, and I've been an advocate follower of the articles that you write and the things that you talk about in terms of your experience, which I think is excellent. And I think it's very easy for individuals to think, oh, easy, you know, you've made it, you don't suffer with these things. Actually, it's something that still can happen day in, day out. And occasionally I even find myself, it catches me off guard occasionally when you're not expecting it, because you've almost trained yourself to become this, you know, you've got a hard outer shell, and so you can easily take knocks, but it does still catch you off guard, I believe. And I think, you know, when you talk about being the first, you know, there's many people who are, you know, the first and need to pave that way. They need support, because it isn't just because you are, you know, the only Black person in a conference, or, you know, I've been in boardrooms before and I've been the only female and Asian person there. You think, oh my goodness, I'm the only one, I'm by myself. If we don't have people who are paving the way constantly and people who are supportive of those in those positions, we simply can't move forward, because it makes a huge difference for certain individuals, not all, because clearly you were in many instances the first, and I absolutely, I feel, and you know, that resonates a lot with me. But there's many kids and aspiring young bright individuals from Black, Asian, minority ethnic backgrounds who ultimately don't see people in those positions. And so you realize actually it's bigger than just you. It is about the legacy and those who are future leaders who come in the wake, who may or may not be resilient enough to break through themselves, or wouldn't have done it if it hadn't been for having an ear or someone who they admire and respect in a position like yours to actually speak to, and who's willing to be vulnerable and frankly courageous enough to actually talk about the hardships.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the, you know, on the point about role modeling, I think it's important, and I realise that just by me being in the seat, it demonstrates that it can be done. And again, I wish it's something that I had, or, you know, if I could see that CEO, you know, that could point to him or her and say, well, if he or she's done it, that means I can do it. I think what concerns me about like current events is that it's very easy for it to be a trend or a theme. An example is that if we talk about Black, you know, when the recent events, you know, the killing of George Floyd and the Amy Cooper incident in Central Park, when these things happened, you know, and then we launched the I Am campaign, we were flooded with queries. It's very interestingly how many have actually executed on those queries. Come and talk, okay. And then, like, we want to do this, we want to do that. And within a few weeks, like, there's like a lot of them have just gone silent. And my only reasoning is they've already moved on. Like, in a few weeks, they've already moved on. That's not to say that there aren't some, you know, real agents of change that have taken this to heart and are pushing it. I think it has changed a lot in that regard. But my concern would be, as was always the concern, is that it's a headline, and once the headline is over, people forget about it.
And because how does that make you feel?
I think, you know, look, if we had started this within the last few weeks and it had dried up, I think it would have been harder. But we've been screaming, and I don't know, the image that comes up is that we've been screaming and no sound is coming out. Like, it's loud to us, but no one's hearing it. It's just like a silent scream. So we're kind of, unfortunately, we've been used to operating in this vacuum where it's not on the agenda, and we'd kind of prepared ourselves for this eventuality. Now, that's not to say that that people have shut down completely. I think there were firms who really have made this a priority, and I think that's excellent. I think my concern is that they would seem to be still in the minority. I don't think there's a sweeping change that's happened yet. It might have felt like it, but when I look at the number of people that said do this and do that, and we want to do this, and suddenly it's kind of gone very, very quiet when we've gone back and said, that's of some concern. But the other side of it, I guess, is that, as you say, just because you're in the seat and you haven't made it, so to speak, doesn't mean that you don't need support. So, but I've kind of embraced. I had a long time, because my reasons for doing this were self-interested in the sense that maybe I'd make life easier for myself, but it was never around building a profile or a brand. And I do know that that is some people's motivation. It really isn't mine. In my firm, BlackRock, when someone says we've heard good things about you, I'm always hoping, I hope it's about my work as well as my diversity efforts, because I'm employed to do my job. I do this because no one else is doing it. But it is emotionally taxing doing this. But I've kind of embraced it. I've kind of thought, there's no one else that is there that's going to do it for you. There's a group of us in Talk About Black and some very inspirational individuals. And we had the assistance from like inspirational individuals from the diversity projects, for example. But I've now embraced it. That that's the gig, and that's your role now, and it's my job, and someone needs to do it. So that kind of defaults to me.
Well, Gavin, you do an absolutely fantastic job. And when you said they're emotionally taxing, it really, I think the perception of diversity and inclusion holistically, and this is, not even including how incredibly taxing, Black Lives Matter and all the work you're doing around the race and ethnicity field is. But I often think the preconception is that diversity and inclusion is often some of the fun stuff. And I think if it's ever proved a point that it necessarily isn't, is everything that's happened in the ether of late. And I do sometimes question as well myself, why it is always those who are ethnic minorities, Black, brown, Chinese, whatever, who are the ones that are speaking out about this. I've had conversations with a number of senior executives who have said, well, I need to give this to certain individuals in the firm and I just want to pull my hair out. And I say, no, that is not it. What is the point of the converted, preaching to the converted all the time? This is something which is everyone. This is something which should be owned by everyone. Everyone has got a shared responsibility. And I'm not sure about you, but I got terribly frustrated and sucked into some of the various feeds on the socials and LinkedIn, as you do. And I try not to do that. But certain ones with the whole, all lives matter. We know all lives matter. We are saying stand shoulder to shoulder now, and we're trying our best to keep the momentum on. It is the most relentless, exhausting job ever, emotionally, working within diversity and inclusion and belonging, because you really have to love it and not just be there for the moment, for the flash in the pan, which is why I admire individuals like yourself and all of our other Black friends and colleagues and others who are allies, who are still keeping momentum up with this, because it can't be forgotten. I mean, the positive thing is I do feel that there is a slightly different change this time in terms of what's happening with organisations and government, but still not enough.
Yeah, I agree, and hence my comments around it's a headline and have people already moved on. That's my number one concern. And look, you're right. I mean, I think the rate of attrition for people that work in D&I is incredibly high, because they are hired with, the firms make great proclamations about what they want to do. then you've given this like, very little resource. You might, maybe no ability to execute, and then you have to fix a whole myriad of problems, which is why, why D&I professionals, get burnt out. And I'm not a D&I professional. I don't do it full time. Well, maybe full time around my other full time job, but and I know how difficult that is. And I agree. I mean, I think to really make change, it needs to be owned by the majority. So you do end up in this, you're right, this perverse situation where you are trying to fix problems that you are a victim of and that you didn't create. And I can't think of any other incidents where that's actually the case. I've racked my brain to think about what's the parallel here? Where else has this happened? But this discussion around race, that seems to be the case where, the first question is, you have this, there has been this realization that, oh, there is a problem. And maybe the first, particularly by, like the white majority, the first question is, we didn't know. Okay, I'm surprised, but I accept that. I feel bad. Oh my God, what can I do? Which, again, I understand, but the first reaction should be not what can I do? I don't understand, is you were suffering from this, all this time and I didn't know. And what can we do to help you? That should be the dialogue, but it isn't, and it hasn't been. It's been the other way around. And then on your second point, I think you're right. It's been, your D&I professionals are invariably a minority themselves. So you find a lot of Black women, a lot of gay people occupying those roles, which is, it's just, they don't, it doesn't have to be the minority groups that fix the problem. It can be the majority. And whoever holds that role, they can, let them, give them a board seat, right? Put it as, make it a business priority, or at least let them report into someone who's on the board. So there's some jurisdiction over it. Don't just shove it in a department in a closet somewhere. So firms that take this seriously, as you'll know in your role, you can see who's in that seat, where they're sitting in the first, where they're sat in the firm, and what resources they have at their disposal.
Exactly. And it's about the action they can take, because look, well, I was going to say I accept it, but I don't. We all know why, generally speaking. Obviously, these views are my own, but we all pretty much, I would like to think, know the why behind diversity, inclusion, belonging, Black Lives Matter. But what's the how now? Because actions speak far louder than words. And, I wonder whether you could share a little with us more around the recent work that you've been doing. Because, of course, Larry Fink, who's the chairman and CEO of BlackRock, said outright a number of key actions, which I thought was phenomenal, and did it very quickly, which is what we need to see from leaders. And many organizations, oh, we're doing it internally, or, oh, we're, this, that, and the other. Come on now. It is, if not now, then when?
Yeah, I agree. So we've have a number of targets and things that we're trying to achieve within Talk About Black. And the analogy that we use is this idea of a hose pipe, and there are kinks in the hose pipe which stop the water from flowing or the water from reaching its final destination. And to really unlock the potential, you need to unkink each kink. There's no point just unkinking one, because it still gets stuck somewhere else in the pipe. So that's the analogy that we use, and it's analogous to the experience that Black people, not all, again, my disclaimer, but that many have had, which is, there are basically 5, which is a socioeconomic context that many find themselves in, which is higher rates of unemployment, mental illness, lower incomes, so basically this economic disempowerment, and being victims of crime. The second is that in education, there's this chronic underperformance, which has improved for some groups, but isn't nearly where it should be. The third is that even if these individuals do achieve a good education, when they apply to work in finance or the asset management industry, rarely are they successful. when they do get in, there's a higher rate of attrition, which basically means that when you look at the senior levels, there was a distinct underrepresentation. And number 5 is that as a taboo subject, race is a taboo subject in that nobody is comfortable in the UK of talking about it, because as you said, we think we live in this post-racial society where, I don't see colour, or, racism is a US problem, it's not a UK problem. It just manifests itself differently over here. So I think we uncover these problems and then we set about finding the solutions. Overarching, what we're asking the industry to do is sign the Race at Work Charter. So this was developed by Biz a few years ago, and it has a number of objectives which include having a zero tolerance to bullying and harassment when it comes to race in the workplace, tracking and publicising ethnicity pay data, having a development plan, a succession plans around your minority talent, like hiring someone who's committed to resolving or focusing on diversity and inclusion in your firm. And we're aiming that at firms at over 150 full-time employees. And what we all say to the industry is that we like firms to sign up to the Race at Work Charter, within a 3-year time frame, put these mechanisms in place. And then at the 3-year juncture, we'd like to set some targets for the industry to increase representation, be it around representation, intake, or seniority in their firms. And that's another 2 years to start, reducing those or achieving those targets or reducing those gaps. So that's our 5-year, a big 5-year target. We also, when we think about those, socioeconomic challenges, which are kind of distinct from the workplace, we have a target of raising a minimum of £5 million to resolve those challenges. So we are finding partners, grassroots organisations, charities that are doing some great work in reducing knife crime, giving kids aspiration, helping mental health. So we want to partner with them because we can't do it all ourselves. We want to partner with them and give them the funding to help them achieve their aims, because again, they are underfunded. In terms of those other kinks in the hose pipe, we're starting an after-school program. We hold an annual student insight day where we attract Black students, or graduates, I should say, to the industry. In terms of that progression and retention, we have mentoring circles where we basically have young Black and minority ethnic professionals who come into Chatham House rules conversation where they can ask us anything, and we give them the benefit of our experience, and they reverse mentor us. And we have a C-suite program which we intend to try to help, and we'll take one of the aspects of the Park Review, which had this target of 1 by 21 in the industry, to try to develop that talent. So maybe C-suite minus 1 or 2, get them to the C-suite, and then we can develop board representation afterwards, obviously, which is where you operate, Leila. And in terms of that 5th, in terms of breaking the taboo, well, it's things like this, right? It's speaking on podcasts, it's going into companies and doing panel discussions, it's the I Am campaign, it's writing, it's just getting people talking and getting comfort with the subject. So we are doing a lot, and as I said, there are only 8 of us that are trying to do all this. So, but we are slowly gathering more help to do it all.
Mm-hmm. Those are some excellent key bullet points that I think anyone who is listening into this podcast today, whether you're an individual, whether you work for a large organization, if you're a CEO, some brilliant actionable points. This is not rocket science, but it is very taxing and exhausting for those who are involved, and it takes a huge amount of time, effort and energy. And as you say, Gavin, the way forward really is very much around collaboration, because we can't do it by ourselves. Who can help? Anyone can help. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are within whatever organization, there is a way or a means with which to help. But I think particularly powerful are, as you say, the reverse mentoring. What a great initiative. I've seen some of the most incredible programs really work very, very well when CEOs in particular are open to change and listening to those young kind of zillennials talk about, tech and fast moving stuff that's going on in their world. It really can be mind-blowing. In particular, because diversity and inclusion, as you've rightly kind of brought up there with the 5 bullet points, it's never going to ever be one silver bullet. It's a multifaceted, actually pretty damn complex situation that needs to be mile wide, mile deep, and across diagonally in both ways in order to actually make it work. And on top of that, You gotta keep doing it. Now, I was saying to someone else the other day who, well, it made them laugh. I was trying to explain it all. I said, it's like getting married and saying you're never going to work on the marriage because it'll be perfect from the day that you get married. You know, it's something that's living, breathing, sleeping. It's organic and it's growing, and we all need to play a part in it.
I can agree more.
I'm so pleased that you shared some of those actionable points. I think you're doing an absolutely phenomenal job. Every time I see you pop on LinkedIn, which is pretty much every day, actually, especially with the hashtag I am campaign, which I know I did that as well and held up the sign.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, no, absolute least that I can do. It's the words now into action, but that went absolutely viral. So keep up the great work. And before we run out of time today, because I know I was keen to catch up with you as well afterwards about some very important initiatives. Not that you don't get asked, I'm sure, all the time, Gavin. I wonder whether we can literally do our very quick lightning round at the end, because I really would like to see what your answers are. You're only allowed 30 seconds for each question, though. That's the only thing. So let's see whether you can keep it to the 30 seconds. So firstly, I wonder if you could go back in time and give the young Gavin advice when you're having, you know, the rough or ride and kind of changed education and moved as your mum was trying to do the best for you. What advice might you have given to your younger self, or indeed anyone else who is listening, who's either had a similar experience that resonates with them, or they're about to go on their journey?
For me, it'd be quite simple. It would be find a support network, because the journey, you're right, is rough. But see it through, because those differences are probably your greatest strength. That's it.
It's a great answer. And what about your biggest inspirations? Could be personal, could be business.
Yeah, so that my mum, as I probably said, like, you know, she just led by example, right? So put herself through university, you know, just set, you know, resilience and hard work is what she had. My wife, you know, she just believes in me, and everybody needs that person who believes in them. And like, I never had a father, but I would say my late father-in-law, which is very strange because he, you know, he spoke French. My French is really bad. His English is really bad. But like he was my biggest fan, and it's what I always thought a father would be. So it's a shame that he's gone, but he did enough. He did enough.
Mm-hmm. That's so lovely. And finally, I wonder if you could give advice to anyone who's listening right now, and this could be seasoned leaders who again are battling with bias, could be discrimination, anything like that, and really need some support. What would you say to them? And is there any advice that you could give them?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because I've been there, and it's challenging, because like, how do you deal with that situation? And I would say that every situation is unique. And honestly, now I would just ask yourself what your compass is, where it's pointing you towards, and just head to. I know this might sound like a bit of a, you know, a bit ethereal, but you know, where's it telling you to go, and go there, because sometimes you can't control the things that happen to you and the outcomes, but you can control how you behave in those situations, how you feel, because after everything is done, that's the thing that you're going to remember. What, like, you know, were you true to yourself? Did you do the right thing? And if you did, and if you are, honestly, having been through those situations, that's the most important thing. It really, really is. It really is.
Thank you so much, Gavin. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
By way of my usual summary, I will keep it brief, but I hope everyone's really enjoyed the show today as much as I have. It's been phenomenal speaking with Gavin. I think there's some really great actionable points that everyone can take away, whoever you are within whichever business. Not only was it brilliant hearing about the resilience, the courage, the ability to really break through what are often, the first of many scenarios for Gavin. But I think, wherever you are at in your career, make sure you do find the peer group, as Gavin says, around you. You can't underestimate the power of a network, and having that support, that guidance, and having an ear to listen, I think makes such a difference. If you don't have anyone around you, make sure that you do go find a support network, whichever level you're at. Brilliant people like Gavin paving the way, being great role models. Make sure you're reaching out, make sure you check out the hashtag I am network. And finally, some of the key pieces for me were really those actionable points. Every leader of every organization can speak out and say something, and naturally influences many, many people. So make the most of that platform. Sounds like there's some great things happening at BlackRock, with Gavin leading the forefront. So where active guidance, development of careers, putting metrics and targets in place, don't be scared of those. No one gets everything right all the time, but the most important thing is there is a commitment, a true commitment. Don't forget about the importance of this. Don't let it be a fad. Don't let it have gone to waste. The movement and the drive for people who are working damn hard to make sure this future, for our future leaders is as positive as it can be. So thank you again for listening. My name is Leila Mackenzie-Dellis. You've been listening to the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. We're with you every week. You can check out all of the show notes at the end of today's show, and all of the key actionable points. We'll put those in there for you. So if you missed writing anything down, don't worry, it will be there. Visit www.darglobal.org/podcast and make sure you check out Gavin on LinkedIn along with the hashtag I am pages. Thank you so much for watching the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. Please do feel free to hit the like button below, or if you'd like to receive future notifications, do ping the notification bell here at the side. If you're interested in the audio version only, you can find it on the following streaming platforms. Any extra info and descriptions will be in the links below. Look forward to seeing you soon.